We live in a world of blinding light and constant noise. We are surrounded by invisible energy, a lifeblood that powers our homes, our cities, and our very lives. It gives us light in the dark, warmth in the cold, and a constant invisible connection to every other human being on the planet. We flip a switch, and the world bends to our will. But what if one day that power simply vanished? Not from a storm, not from a blackout, but from a complete, irreversible end. What if in a single, silent moment, the power that runs our world simply ceased to be? This isn't just a story about surviving. This is a story about a fundamental shift in the human experience. It's a journey back in time to an age we only read about, where our ancestors relied on their wit, their hands, and each other to survive. This is a tale of a humanity stripped of its greatest tool, forced to find out if we are still capable of surviving without the comfort and convenience we take for granted. The immediate chaos, a global disconnect. The moment the electricity vanishes, the world would not explode. It would simply fall silent. The hum of every refrigerator, the buzz of every computer, the roar of every factory and every television screen would simply stop. The initial shock would be disorienting, and the fear would be palpable. The first casualties would be communication. Every cell phone, every radio, every television, and the entire global internet would become useless objects. The information superhighway would vanish in an instant, and for the first time in generations, humanity would be truly isolated. Rumors and misinformation would spread like wildfire, as no one would be able to confirm or deny the events. The only way to get a message to someone on the other side of town would be to send a person, and the only way to get a message to the other side of the world would be on a boat. But the chaos would not be limited to communication. All infrastructure that relies on electricity would fail. Hospitals would lose their life support systems and their incubators. Banks would become useless vaults of paper money and hard drives with no power. Our water supply, which is pumped by electric motors, would stop flowing. Within hours, the largest cities would become a ticking time bomb of unhygienic conditions and civil unrest. The global population, so used to a world of endless convenience, would be thrown into a state of panic as the world that they knew vanishes before their eyes. Transportation would also grind to a halt. Every electric train, every car, every subway, and every airplane would become a useless lump of metal. Our highways would become a graveyard of abandoned vehicles. Our world would shrink to the size of a walkable village. For the first time in generations, the fastest way to get to your next-door neighbor's house would be to walk. Humanity would find itself in a bizarre state of isolation, surrounded by the useless monuments of a civilization that no longer exists. The long-term consequences. The new society. The chaos of the first few weeks would give way to a new kind of society, one built on a return to the fundamentals of survival. This new world would not be a post-apocalyptic wasteland, but a new kind of world, one built on a different kind of power. Energy and technology. Without electricity, our technology would revert to pre-industrial models. The steam engine would be king once again, fueled by wood and coal, and the windmill and the water wheel would be the primary sources of energy. Our cities, once centers of commerce and culture, would become uninhabitable death traps. Without a reliable food and water supply, the vast populations would be forced to migrate to the countryside in a desperate scramble for survival. The balance of power would shift from the city to the country, as the farmer and the blacksmith would become the most valuable people in society. But in the ashes of the old world, a new class of people would emerge. The tinkerer class, the engineers, the scientists, and the mechanics who knew how to build a steam engine from scratch or a water wheel from a few parts, would be the new elite. They would be tasked with rebuilding civilization from the ground up, not with a computer, but with their hands and their minds. The new economy money as we know it would become meaningless. With no banks to store it and no systems to transfer it, its value would simply vanish. The new economy would be based on a barter system of goods and skills. A blacksmith might trade a shovel for a bag of grain, and a doctor might trade a medical checkup for a bushel of corn. A person's value would be based not on their wealth, but on their ability to help the community survive. The most valuable people would be those who could farm, those who could build, and those who could heal without the use of modern technology. The political landscape. Without the ability to communicate over long distances, central governments would be replaced by local, community-based leadership. Small tribes and villages would form around charismatic leaders who could provide for their people. Old laws and social structures would be rediscovered and re-examined, and new ones would be created to deal with the unique challenges of a world without electricity. The concept of a nation-state would be replaced by a collection of isolated, self-sufficient communities, each with its own laws, its own culture, and its own way of life. The philosophical and psychological impact. The greatest challenge of a world without electricity wouldn't be physical or political. It would be philosophical. For the first time in generations, humanity would be forced to confront its own vulnerability. We would be reminded that we are not the masters of our universe, but simply a part of it. The initial fear and chaos would be replaced by a new kind of human spirit. With no distractions from the digital world, people would be forced to look at each other, to talk to each other, and to form a new kind of community. The loss of our modern life would be a devastating blow, but it would also be a chance for a new kind of spiritual and emotional growth. We would rediscover the value of human connection, the simple pleasure of a conversation by candlelight, and the beauty of a night sky free of light pollution. The biggest question in this new world would be, what happens to the human soul? Would we become more resilient, more self-reliant, and more connected to the world around us? Or would the loss of our technology leave us stranded in a world we no longer know how to live in? It's a question that has no easy answer, but it's one that a world without electricity would be forced to answer every single day. Chat, do you think humanity would become happier in a world without technology, or would the constant struggle for survival make life unbearable? Who do you think would be the most valuable person in a world without electricity? Do you think a world without electricity would be a more peaceful or a more violent place? This timeline forces us to confront the fact that we are more dependent on a single resource than we realize. A world without electricity is not a fairy tale or a nightmare. It is a story of a human race that has to learn to survive without the very thing that made it great. It is a world where the past is not a memory, but a future. If you want to keep exploring the what-ifs and see how our world could be different, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Timeline Shift, and get ready for our next adventure.